looking through history books, and I came across Shannon's book. Found myself in the middle of the floor perusing through it, and when we started the Cherry Blossom Festival, I thought, well, we need to invite Shannon to be a guest, and he accepted. And so it's kind of a full circle moment from the college library to Shannon's first visit here 20 years ago to now having back on the festival stage. And if you've kept up with his world, he's everywhere. I was just telling him, it's kind of funny. I was at the gas station one day here in Marshfield, and they have those videos that come up on the screen in the gas station while you're pumping your gas. I heard this voice, and I turned around, and there was Shannon speaking to me in the middle of Marshfield at the gas station, giving a report. So Mary Achor, who is such a dear friend to the Cherry Blossom Festival, and we consider her our in-house presidential historian, is going to have the pleasure of being our moderator, so I'll let her tell you a little bit more about our program. But if you would make welcome both of our special guests today.
Oh, yeah, this is really cool. This is a cool day. I just spent the morning portraying First Lady Lou Henry Hoover for a whole bunch of fifth graders out at the Dickey House under the trees. It was so cool. It was just so cool. And so I knew, this is my day. I get to do the kids, and I get to interview Shannon. I mean, hey. Shannon, what great-great grandson, great, sixth great grandson of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemmings. And if I told you all the stuff that he does, we'd be 30 minutes into our hour. I mean, this is a man that works. And he does this wonderful kid things. He does these daddy duty, and I just crack up every time I see one, because he always does them with these kids, Madison, Mackenzie, Carter, and there's always a point to it. They're always funny, and there's always loving, and there's always a point to them. So, why don't I let you tell everybody what you're doing now, besides duplicity?
Okay, where do I start? Okay, well, hello, everyone. It's great to be back. Thank you so much for having me here and welcoming me back with so much love. I always love coming here because it's like a little reunion, right? It's like coming back home to Marshfield. I can't believe it's been 20 years. I know Devin's gotten older. I don't know about me, but, Nick, too, by the way. But it's exciting to be here, and I came here. I was in Austin earlier this week, so I've been traveling a lot and trying to get here, but it's been a whirlwind. I've been very busy. You mentioned Duplicity. I'm in the new Tyler Perry movie. It's called Duplicity on Prime Video. Make sure you check it out. So it's pretty amazing that I get a phone call one day after I'm anchoring the news, and the phone person says, Tyler Perry would like to speak to you. And I'm like, huh, what? The Tyler Perry? And I was like, okay, if you don't know Tyler Perry, he's a billionaire. He has tons of movies out. Most people are familiar with his Medea movies. They're like hilarious comedies. But this one I'm in is a drama thriller. So if someone gets killed and I have to help this lawyer find out who did it, what really happened, and all the twists and turns of the film. So it's pretty exciting. At first, I thought I was going to be in a Medea movie. I was like, sure, I'll do it. but no, it was not. But it was pretty surprising that it was going to be such a well-received movie, #1 on Prime Video. It was in the top 10 for weeks, and it's still out, so you guys can still watch it when you get home. It was an amazing experience to work with him. But besides it being a full-time actor now, you mentioned social media, so I'm on social media at Mr. Shannon LaNier. If you have social media, Instagram or TikTok, I'm almost 1 million followers through the platforms, so I do a lot of viral videos and silly stuff with my kids and shenanigans. I like to show a sillier side to life, because as a news anchor, I spend a lot of time reporting on death and murder and crazy things that happen in the news. I said, I need something lighter, something to bring me up and a lot of people that are like tired of all the sad stuff on the news. So I started doing the social media skits with my kids, and we just do silly shenanigans and have a good time. The one you were talking about is the news anchor dad. Well, I put on my news anchor voice and I talk about my kids and I'll say, this just in. And I'll talk about how dirty they are or how crazy they are. You know, all the stuff that parents want to say and want to vent about, I get to do in these skits with my kids. And they're part of the skits and they're all in. They'll come up with ideas like, Dad, Mackenzie left all her clothes on the bathroom floor. We should do a skit about that. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. So we have fun. And I would like to show that there are dads out there that are positively involved in their kids' lives 365 days of the year, especially, you know, as a black father. I think we get a lot of the bad rap of saying, oh, there's the deadbeat dads and I'm out there. But statistics show that African-American fathers are more active in their kids' lives than their counterparts. So I wanted to show that and display that there are dads out there that are doing an amazing job, that I'm not a unicorn. There's tons of others out there, but that I love spending time with my kids. I travel with them a lot. I'm sorry I couldn't bring them here. They're busier than I am, but their schedule is crazy, so they weren't able to make it with all their sports activities this year. But we have a good time. We have a lot of fun, and those are the main two things that I'm focusing on now is the acting and the social media. But I still travel a lot during speaking engagements, hosting different events around the country, which I still love doing. So, you know, I just try to keep living every day as if it was my last, because none of us know when it's going to happen, right? So live it to the fullest.
You know what I loved about it, about Duplicity? They cast you as a newsman.
Right. I'm playing a news anchor named Shannon. His name is Shannon Marcus. And Tyler Perry, he told me, he said, I'm going to send you the cast, see if you like it. And I was like, no, I'm going to like it. I still want to do it. Don't worry. He said, well, I'm going to send you the cast. You'll know who your character is. And then I was like thinking after I hung up the phone, how am I going to know who the character is? I read the script and his name is Shannon. So I was like, oh, that's pretty creative.
What about typecasting you? You'll never, ever, ever play anything but a newscaster.
Don't say
ever
that.
Again.
Don't say that. I'm trying to get most of the scenes. I did God's Not Dead. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that series. I did the third one. He said it's not part 3, but it's God Dead, Light in the Darkness, I think it's called. But I was a news correspondent on that too, a talking head on that. So I'm trying to get out of the news anchor reporter scenes, because a lot of the movies that I've done, that's what they cast me as. So I guess it's not a bad thing. I'm waiting to get the news anchor in a Marvel movie, and then you know, then I'm like, okay, I'll take it. You know,
A tough. Never mind.
Yeah, never mind. Okay, we'll move on.
I'm
from that.
80 years old and I do forget stuff.
You're looking good.
It isn't bad when I'm writing because I just sit there till the word comes. Anyway, yeah, I really loved your book.
Thank you.
He's got a book called, I forgot the name, Daryl.
It's okay, I got your back. It's called Jefferson's Children, The Story of One American Family, where my co-author Jane Feldman and I travel around the world to interview descendants of Thomas Jefferson, both through his wife's Martha's side of the family and through Sally Hemmings' side of the family. And we try to weave these stories together so you can see that a lot of people want to think it's the black side and the white side. Well, this family is so diverse, you can't really say black side and white side, because some of the Hemmings family members through Sally Hemmings look whiter than the Jefferson side, and some of the Jefferson side look darker than, so it's very confusing. But, but that's my family. Love it or hate it.
They did a picture of you as Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, yeah, we should have had that up there.
Yeah. And I understand that you weren't all that thrilled with it.
Okay, so what it was is the Smithsonian called me and they said, you know, we're doing this project where we are, I guess, taking the currently living descendants of various people in history and dressing them like those people from a historic picture, like the Peel picture of Thomas Jefferson, what most people know as his official portrait. They dressed me like him and had the same positioning, the same lighting, same background, everything. And then they morphed us together. So you can see this is Jefferson, this is Shannon, and back and forth. And I was like, I don't look like that guy. And then you see it and you're like, oh, these genes are strong. I would never thought I looked like Thomas Jefferson. But when you put us side by side and then they morphed us over one another, like they dissolved slowly from his face to my face, I'm like, and this is thing, they did it like 5 years ago. Literally every year it goes viral with like 20 million views, and it's like all over the place where people are like, this descendant of Thomas Jefferson, this black guy looks like Thomas Jefferson. And I'm like, what? It's just insane how they did that. And when you see it, it's just mind-blowing that you can take these genes hundreds of years apart and still have the strong figure details in it. And it's amazing. Drew Gardner did that project with the Smithsonian. I'm happy I did it. But at the time, they were like, so we're thinking a white wig. I was like, I'm thinking not. So I was like, I'm not doing the wig. But I wanted to continue to have my own face, and I think it was more powerful to show. I mean, I got enough white hair as it is, but I think it was more powerful not to do that part, to really take my features and my complexion and everything to show that we are a little different, but it's still the same as well. And people have been blown away by that. It's in the Smithsonian now, and it's in a touring exhibit that they have with other people that they've reenacted with. But it was an amazing opportunity to be a part of that. So now I'm happy I did it. I'm also happy I didn't wear the wig.
How did you find out?
So it's been one of those things that's been in my family. I've known that I'm a descendant of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemmings my whole life through the oral history that's been passed down through my family. And so it's just one of those things that we always knew. And it was like a little joke in the family. Like I would get a $2 bill from one of my uncles for my birthday. And, I remember in second grade, I went to school and I told the class while we were studying the presidents that Thomas Jefferson is my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. And the teacher said, sit down and stop telling lies. So I was mortified. The whole class laughed. But the good part was my mother came to school the next day and corrected the teacher and said, my son is telling the truth. He is a descendant of Thomas Jefferson through Sally Hemmings, and don't tell him he's lying. And she helped teach my brother Sean and I the important lesson that we define who we are. Don't let anyone else tell us who we are and what we stand for, and know who we are and take that with pride. And so that's one of the things that we learned at a young age, because, of course, there were many people who didn't understand or didn't believe us throughout the process. Now, it's widely known. The Monticello down the place where Jefferson lived is now a museum. They uphold the story. They are behind that Jefferson was the father of Sally Hemmings' children. And so it's nice to have that validation from them, but we never needed validation from anyone, because that lesson my mother taught us. We know who we are, and we don't need anyone to help tell us.
I saw in your book where, I think this was at one of the early Monticello convention things, and this lady called you nasty, nasty. I just about freaked out when I saw that.
Yeah, I went up to shake her hand, and she said, she was the older woman, she was like, oh, nasty, nasty, and would not have anything to do with me. So I said, unfortunately, she's the one who's missing out on having the opportunity to know me and to know such an amazing family, because on both sides, this family is filled with doctors and lawyers and educators, so many amazing people. And I feel like that hate in her heart is just only going to consume her. It can't consume me. So I tried to just say, some people are just going to have to die off until the story can be told, because they won't have an open heart. But the story you don't hear about a lot of times in the media is how many of the family members were embracing of us, were loving, and how we now are on group chats, and we all follow each other on Facebook. And when I'm in a different city, I'll call them up, and we'll go to each other's weddings and funerals, and we'll support each other and be there for each other. And so I think that's the bigger story of all the love that has come out of these families coming together that have been separated by society, by race for so many years, are now coming together regardless of what we look like as a loving family.
One of these days, we're going to have to heal this racism thing. And in the book, and I'm not sure if this was your writing or another cousin, and the word is dialasso. Dialasso, it's a Greek word meaning what Jesus said, first go and be reconciled with your brother. And there was a wonderful thing written about that. Did you write that part?
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
It was so. I probably should go back and read my book at some point, but it's been so long. But that's one of the lessons that I talk about when I go around the world teaching and having talks and speaking engagements, keynotes. I try to lead with the love that Jesus led with, like regardless of what we look like and who we are. As Dr. King said, judge each individual by the content of their character, not just by the color that you see on the outside. That you have to, regardless if they're black, they're white, they're people. accept them as a human being first. Because you talk about getting over the race thing. Well, we're the ones that can get over the race. It's up to each and every one of us every single day to step out and make a difference. If someone is making a racist joke, don't laugh at it. Say that's not appropriate. And because when you laugh at it or you're silent about it, then you're giving them permission and saying it's okay for them to continue doing that. If you see something, say something. As something is happening, we can start right now in our families, in our communities, speaking up for people, defending people, and not just being silent and let these things happen. So yes, we can be the change we want to see in the world, and we can start today in our daily lives.
Well, as that great American philosopher Rodney King says, why can't we all just get along?
Right. It actually is so much easier to get along with people. Even if you don't know them or like them, everyone deserves, I tell my kids, everyone deserves a hello. How you doing? Be nice, simple things, a smile. You can, instead of just being so mean to people and just stone-faced, easy things in life can really change someone's day. And I've heard literally stories of people who have been saved from suicide because someone smiled at them. Someone saw them. Someone recognized them when they thought they were invisible or they did not matter. Someone said, hello, I hope you have a good day. It's the simple things that can really make a big difference.
Well, this is what your book says.
Because I don't remember.
Be reconciled. It's the only word in the New Testament that denotes two parties coming to the table and creating a different new solution that benefits both of them. It's not domination, where one person gets his or her way and the other doesn't. Both parties input on it. The reconciliation that takes place between humanity starts with two people. I love this.
Right. It's so simple, but also so many people have a challenge doing that. And I believe that was probably part of Shay Banks Young and Julia Jefferson Western's interview. And unfortunately, they're no longer with us. And that's another thing. Like when these stories, a lot of times they pass with the people. So it's like when people say, where do I start? Start talking to the family members in your family that are alive today. Get the stories, write them down. Do a video with them if you don't want to write it down, and get the stories, because once they're gone, the stories are gone too. So I try to interview a lot of the elders in my family now, and I try to get these stories from them while they're alive, just so you can have the history, the documentation from them. But Shay and Julia, two different people. Shay was raised as a black woman in Ohio. Julia Jefferson Western was raised as a white woman in New York her whole life. Julia never knew that she was a descendant of Sally Hemmings. She always heard that she was a descendant of Thomas Jefferson, but they thought it was from Martha's side of the family. Come to find out after Fawn Brody's book came out that she says, and Julia is at this point in her 60s, and she gets a knock on the door and says, yeah, I wanted to talk to you about being a descendant of Thomas Jefferson. She was like, okay. And she was like, do you know how? She was like, oh yeah, we got a good point. She was like, well, did you know it's through Sally Hemmings? And she was like, huh? And so in her 60s, she's finding out. She was like, now I'm black. And so it's so funny to have her, and she loved it. She was so embraced. She said it made her more interesting. And to see Shay, who always knew she was black, and Julia, who was just finding out she was black, have these in-depth and intimate conversations in front of crowds about the differences of growing up in each way, and them being willing to embrace each other's differences and understand where each of them come from. And sometimes you just can't assume you know everything about someone else or something about another race. And sometimes it's okay to ask, coming from the right place in your heart, to ask, why is this and why is that, so you can understand them and not just assume you know everything about that person. And if it's coming from a place of love, then I think those people will be understanding and willing to answer you and help you see. Because sometimes we're just so closed off and assume every person is this way. Well, we're not a monolith, and we're not all the same. So sometimes you just got to get to know people.
As you were growing up, was there an evolution to your spirit? I suppose you had to come to terms with that, and the white response. I'm just really interested.
It's been a journey. So, again, I've always known I was a descendant of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. I did not always understand the dynamics, understanding that me as a kid in second grade, I'm related to a president. That's so awesome. That's so cool. Me in my older adult years, like, oh, wait, how did this relationship happen? He was a slave owner. Now I understand what slavery is. And I know a lot of people like to picture this as a beautiful love story. It was him falling in love with Sally. They were together the best way they knew how. But the reality of the situation, unfortunately, is she was property. She was his slave. He was a slave owner. He had the right to do with her what he chose to do and what he wanted to do at any time, anywhere, anyhow. So regardless of what people want the relationship to be, whether it was a Stockholm syndrome or whatever happened, I was not there. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is she was a slave, and I had to deal with that mindset, understanding what that meant and judging it not in my contemporary eyes, but in the eyes of the day and that time. So it was a struggle to understand how this relationship happened, and that it could have most likely been rape, and that she did not have a choice to say yes or to say I wanted to be
No
part
option.
of this relationship. Yeah, and I know a lot of people, it's a lot easier, at least for me, in understanding the story, to think of it as a love story, because you don't want to imagine your great-great-great-great-grandmother being raped for 38 years. But it's also the reality of the times that she had no choice. And even in experiences when I went down to Monticello, I've had the opportunity to sleep there at an immersion experience to blend the contemporary eyes to what historical happened, and to be there. I slept on the ground because I wanted a similar experience to what a slave would have experienced when being at Monticello. Now, I couldn't experience it fully because, I didn't have dogs barking in the background, chains rattling, working from sun up to sundown, sleeping on a mud floor with no sheets and pillows. I didn't have that full experience, but to be there and sleep in a replica of a slave cabin, to sleep on the ground, to be in the moment of the spirit. The first year I did it, I was like, I don't want no spirits talking to me. I don't want to hear no ghosts. I don't want to see no ghosts. I don't want none of that stuff happening. So I wasn't open to it. The second year I did it, I slept in the house, in the actual house on the first floor in the wine cellar. And I had a spiritual experience of really connecting with the ancestors. And I was like, so in the wine cellar, they have this gate up that kind of keeps people from touching the wine. It's in the basement if you've ever been in the tunnels of the house. And I was sleeping on the floor again, and I turned over and opened my eyes, and all I see is rails. They looked like jail cell rails. And I just started crying because I felt like in that moment I was feeling what the ancestors were feeling, like I was imprisoned in this place. Now, there weren't really jail cells then when they were there, but they were imprisoned. I was free, but yet I could not leave in that moment, and I was paralyzed and felt this is what my ancestors may have felt like being here at Monticello, that they were here. They may not have been in chains, but they could not leave. They were imprisoned in this environment, and I just connected with them and just started weeping there at Monticello, and it was you talk about a spiritual experience, to think of what my ancestors go through. And I know a lot of people say that they don't want to think about slavery, or they're tired of thinking about slavery, but I relate it to the pride that my family survived slavery, that they went through the unthinkable, that they had to work from sunup to sundown, that they may have been beaten, that they may have been raped, that they may have been gone through the most horrific experiences in life, but survived. That I come from a strong people, that I come from people of survivors, and that when times get tough for me, how dare I complain about my life and the frivolous things that happened when my ancestors had to go through the unthinkable. So I see it as a source of pride that I come from survivors, and that I can survive anything in my life at this day.
I saw in your book also that after Jefferson died, Miss Sally would walk to his grave 6+ miles to tend his grave a couple of times a week. And what they were saying was, if this didn't exhibit love, it exhibited some kind of a deep commitment. And I don't know how long she did that, but.
Well, there are historians that say that that's just a fable in the family, that did not necessarily happen, because at that point in her life she would have been too old, there would have been too much of a trek, that maybe she did it once or twice, that also, in that time, people most likely knew who she was, so she wasn't bothered by walking by herself or walking to the gravesite. But there is speculation and different sides of that story that say, some people say it didn't happen either that often or it didn't happen at all. And there's a lot less known, unfortunately, about Sally, which is why we're not sure. We still don't know where Sally Hemmings is buried. It is, but now some people would say, she's buried next to Jefferson. Yeah, that's a nice story, but highly unlikely that that is the case. More likely is that she is sadly under the parking lot of a Hampton Inn hotel. That's because where her house was at that time when she was freed, after Jefferson died, his daughter freed her, and she moved down to Charlottesville, where there is now a Hampton Inn. Well, based on history, a lot of times when people died, they buried them on their property. So that's why they think that she's buried on what was her property at the time, which is now a Hampton Inn parking lot.
Disgusting.
Yeah, and they don't think that she would have been also buried in the slave cemetery at Monticello, which now they have found at least 2 grave cemeteries, and we're in the process of rectifying them and bringing them back to life. Not necessarily like tombstones or anything, because they didn't have tombstones. They more so had rocks to mark the spaces where they were buried, but putting fencing up around them, planting flowers, putting up plaques, so it's at least recognizing the space as sacred ground where the people were buried.
Some of the things that I've read about Jefferson was that he really didn't think black people had the intelligence of a white person. And in looking and researching stuff, I found a copy of a letter from Jefferson to a scientist in France. And the letter was about a free black mathematician Jefferson had hired to lay out the federal city on the Potomac. But this Negro man named Benjamin Banneker was not simply skilled at laying out property lines. For years, Banneker had penned highly valued best-selling almanacs based on the movements of the solar system he observed himself. And so Jefferson wrote to the scientist, "I shall be delighted to see these incidences of moral eminence so multiplied as to prove that the want of talents observed in them is merely effect of their degraded condition and not proceeding from any difference in the structure of the parts on which intellect depends." So many words to say that want of talents is because we have been battered down, not because there is anything intrinsically wrong with our brain. And we can just look at you, we can look at Lynn Jackson, we can look at all of our black friends and know you guys are smart as whips. I love black people.
And I do too. I like that.
I have a friend, I have a black friend that told me that I was a black woman imprisoned in a white body. And I thought that was the most wonderful.
Right. Well,
I loved it.
The thing is, I guess, as someone in Jefferson's position, you have to, he knew what was right, he knew what was wrong, but he had to find a way to justify it in his mind so it would be okay. Just like the Jefferson Bible. He wrote his own Jefferson Bible and took out all the things about sinning, because he didn't want to be seen as an unjust person who was sinning by keeping and holding people captive. So you have to find a way to justify what you're doing. And I think a lot of times that's what he and other slave owners did, is to say that these are not humans, these are not people. But yet you sleep with these people, you let them raise your children, nurse your children, and all these other things, but they're not people. So I think a lot of times you have to find a way to justify it so you don't feel bad, so you don't feel convicted. And I think that's what a lot of his beliefs were. But yet in his children, he made sure that they were the most skilled craftsmen and, the most skilled chefs. This belief that Sally spoke multiple languages, that she could read, that she could write, so that they were capable, but in his mind, he may have justified it and said, oh, well, that's because they are part white or they have white DNA in them, so that made it different for them. But I think that the understanding of what was reality, he knew. And that's why he also said that some of those slaves should be freed, but he knew that they should be freed and sent back to Africa, because if they stayed, they would probably rebel against the people because of what and how horribly they were treated.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question that's probably going to get my people mad, but I don't understand it, and I want to understand. What about the logic of this DEI stuff that's going on? I don't get it. I don't get what the logic is. I don't get what can you?
I can try. Devin and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. That diversity, equity, inclusion is what DEI stands for. And it was an opportunity, and as it started out, to provide opportunities for fairness and to give people opportunities to have exposure to things that they did not have or were historically marginalized against having opportunities to receive different jobs. Now, this doesn't mean that they're just giving these opportunities to anyone who's not qualified. They're still taking the most qualified people and giving them access to opportunities. So, for example, if it was a college that, say, Harvard, Yale, whatever Ivy League school, that they were 95% white attendees, they'd said, okay, well, let's open it up to people who are non-white and give them opportunities to get into the school, where they weren't just accepting people that had 2.0 GPAs. They were still accepting the best of the best with 4.0 GPAs, scholarships, opportunities, but they were giving them opportunities to have access, because historically they were not allowed to go to those schools. Historically, they were not encouraged to go to those schools. And so they're opening the door to say, we're going to give you opportunities to come here, but you still have to be able to hold your own. You still have to be able to do the work. You still have to be just as worthy of being here as our other students. We're just opening the doors to you. So that's what DEI. And the same with positions. When you look at the jobs that these people have been giving, they're more qualified in most cases than the people that are there, but they just have never been able to get those jobs because it's the gatekeeping that's happened. It's the glass ceiling that they've been hitting. And a lot of people don't even realize the main beneficiaries of DEI were white women. I think now people are finding that out, but you can look it up, you can Google it, that the most people who benefited from DEI were white women. And people just thought, oh, it's just people of color. But the women were seen, it was for minority groups, and that is basically everyone who was not a white man. And so that's what it was to do, to open doors for opportunities. So unfortunately, they're doing a rollback on it now, and people are not having the opportunity to have exposure and access to those things because of that. Now, they did it because they feel like it was unfair, again, to white men, that they would not have these same opportunities. And they say, well, it's not fair. White men can't have this DEI. They're not accessible to it. Well, that's because they've always had the opportunity. They've always had the privilege. They've always been allowed to go to these schools, to have these jobs, to be the leaders. And so they're saying that's not fair now. And so that's one of the reasons that they're taking DEI away. Now, thankfully, because so many doors have been opened and because some things have changed, now people do have opportunities to go to these schools, to have these jobs, regardless of what they look like. But, they're just making it more difficult for those people. But hopefully people will just be able to allow people to go to the schools to get the jobs that they want, regardless of what they look like, just based on their own credibility. And hopefully, people will be smart enough to pick the right people and to let people have opportunities.
So why do you think black people have been taken off of registers and cemeteries?
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's unfair. I think that, we're taking steps back. You know, we've accomplished so much, and through the civil rights movement and different opportunities to grow and to heal and to have equality, I think it's unfortunate that they're taking a step back and trying to erase history in many ways and say it didn't happen, or that, you know, even taking people off the recognized list at the Arlington Cemetery that are recognized people for the duties and the sacrifices that they've made to this country, and trying to make it null and void. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's appropriate. I think they need lists to be able to look things up. If I wanted to go look up some ancestors there and they're on a certain list, and I should be able to look them up on that list and not think that they didn't achieve. They achieved so much by just being in the military and fighting for this country at a time when they weren't even accepted as equal citizens, that they were able to do that and be considered Americans. They should be recognized for that. They should be honored for that, because they went through stuff that no other person had to go through just so they can fight for this country.
Yes. And they were accepted in Europe much more than when they came back to the United States. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll let you die for your country, but they won't let you live in your country, was what they had to go through.
Yeah. And even, you know, we're talking about number 42. We're talking about Jackie Robinson. You know, what? They wanted to give him a dinner in the White House, and he had to go in the back door. I mean, where's the logic? Where's the... Give me a break here. Nothing about this is logical to me, and I kind of like to have a little logic. I kind of like to have a little understanding, so that I can not be a racist white woman. I want to know. I want to understand.
And hopefully people will continue to do the research themselves and will continue understanding the history of this country and not taking away that it makes this country a better place, a more equal place, this is what this country was made to do, to have diversity, to have people from all over come together, a place of freedom. And, you know, hopefully people will still be able to represent that in their communities and do what is right. Because people know what's right and what's wrong. People know. You know in your heart. And I just say, you know, lead as Jesus led. Lead with love. And if you lead with love, then you know what's right. You know what's wrong. Regardless of how much you want to deny it, you know. And you'll have to take that up with your Creator when you see Him.
I just spent the morning representing First Lady Lou Henry Hoover to a whole bunch of fifth graders. It was great. It was great. And I really enjoyed Lou Henry Hoover because she was a tough woman. She fought in China at the Boxer Rebellion. She cared for people who had been shot. She guarded not from 9 to 11 at night. She guarded, make sure that the Boxers weren't attacking. But you know, when she got into the White House, she did even more. She was a big supporter of Girl Scouts, and she said, black girls need to be in the Girl Scouts. And that was way back when. And then when she was in the White House, she invited Mrs. Jessie DePriest to come to tea in the White House. Mrs. DePriest was the wife of a brand new black congressman, and she knew that was the right thing to do, and she knew she was going to get bad static about this. But she fixed it so that people who were invited to that tea were kind and gentle and loving. And she made sure that the guards welcomed Mrs. DePriest in without any kind of negativity. And she did it. And she took a lot of static after that. Bad static. Bad racist static. But she knew it was the right thing to do. And this morning, I told the kids, I said, if you find something that's the right thing to do and you're scared to do it, you do it anyway. You do it anyway because it makes you strong, it makes you powerful, it makes you better citizen of this United States.
And if someone's moral compass is a little off and you're like, I don't know if this is racist, I don't know if this is wrong, think to yourself, would I want that to happen to me? Would I want to be treated like that? Would I want my kid to be treated like that? Would I want my mother to be treated like that? Whether it's an opportunity or something simple like someone making a joke. think, would I want that to happen to me? And if you say no, then maybe it's time for you to stand up for it.
Yeah. I was in with some friends, and this black man was making a racist joke. And I said, stop that. And then I turned around and saw he was black, and I go, well, I guess it's all right. It's you. But that probably wasn't right.
It's still not right. It's still not right. You may get a little pass, but it's still not okay because you're still feeding into the same mindset. And then whether it's a racist joke or they say, a blonde, a brunette, and redhead, it's still the same thing. Any blondes in here tired of the blonde jokes? I mean, thank you. So, it's the same thing. People don't want to be bullied. It's like, let's let the bullying go. Let's simply be nice to people. If you can't think of a nice joke without offending someone, then maybe just don't say the joke at all.
Why can't we all just get along? That great American philosopher, Rodney King.
Yeah, that's the theme of today. Can't we all just get along?
Yeah, good. Well, I know we got some time left. I know there must be questions. Yes, dear.
Oh, he's about almost a foot taller than me, but I'll take it. Both. Yep.
So do you think, I'm going to make an assumption that that Jefferson in some way sincerely cared about her. But do you think that he also could rationalize that relationship in part because she was part white?
I think he cared about her, honestly, as well, at some point in their relationship. Because they had a 38-year thing going on, and it's not documented that he was with anyone else after that, but he also promised his wife Martha that he would not remarry again. So there he could keep her promise. He can keep his promise to her by not remarrying, but also being with Sally because he couldn't marry Sally. But also, Sally Hemmings was the half-sister of his wife Martha. So a lot of people believe that they may look alike or had similar features. So your wife dies in childbirth, and all of a sudden walks in this much younger version of your wife, beautiful. They said she was beautiful, and she's yours to do with what you want. So I think whether it began one way and ended another way, or what the situation and scenario was, I believe that he did have feelings for her. I mean, she was a beautiful woman. Who wouldn't have feelings for her? And this is after his wife, she almost died in childbirth every time she conceived. It's like 6 times she conceived and almost died and had complications in all of these situations. And then some people will say, oh, Jefferson, he just never had a relationship with anyone else ever again. And so this is, you would have thought after like the 3rd time his wife almost died, that if that was the case and he did not like having relations that much, he would have just stopped. But this is a guy who kept going, so I don't doubt he was going to stop having relations after his wife died. But there was Sally. She was there, and she was available for him. And so, like I said, I was not there. I just know that she didn't have an option. She did not have a choice.
She did not. Any other question? Any other questions?
In the back.
Repeat the question so that people on the live stream can hear.
Was Thomas Jefferson a deist or a Christian? I believe in his mind he was a Christian. You could read his Bible and derive for yourself what you think he was, but he was a complicated man who always talked about the struggle of his head and his heart, who was living dual lives. And he was believing one thing, writing another thing, practicing another thing. And there was a room in the front of his house right after you walk in the foyer, the first room on the left on the tour that they give you, that they believe was painted black because they feel that Thomas Jefferson suffered from extreme migraine headaches. And The justification from some historians believe, well, this is a man who was living dual lives, practicing one thing, living another way, and that the pressure of it may have just gotten to him, and so these migraines would come on, and he's living a very, high-pressured lifestyle of being the president and being the ambassador, doing all these things. And so there was a lot of pressure that they believe were brought on by the way he was living, and that's why he had this room that was painted black till he could go in there to get relief from his headaches. So there you go.
Any other question? Yes.
Sally was freed. What about her children? And if they weren't freed, how many generations were slaves?
So one of the reasons I believe that Thomas Jefferson had feelings of some sort for Sally is because he agreed, when he didn't have to free all of her children at the age of 21. And he actually upheld that. The only people on his plantation and he had over 600 slaves, the only people that he freed at the age of 21 were the children he and Sally Hemmings had together. And when they were in Paris, she was a freed woman there, and he had to convince her to come back to Monticello with him because her brother did not want to come back. Her brother James was like, I don't want to go back. I want to stay here. We're free here. Let's just stay. I'm here with you, so you'll have somebody here. And Jefferson said, no, I want you guys to come back to Monticello with me. And it's believed that she was already pregnant at that time with their first child. And so it was like, hey, you come back. I promise that any children we have together, I'll free them at the age of 21. And he actually upheld that promise to her. So we know they were freed, but she wasn't freed in his will. He never freed her. It was his daughter who freed her. Now, some believe that some believe that it was because he gave her the directive to do so after he died. But a lot of people are upset, like, he should have freed her while he had the chance. And what kind of relationship is that if you agree to be in this slave relationship? And I don't know. But that's the way it was. It's complicated to really understand everything that happened in this back then, looking at it in contemporary times. But I feel like he could have done more for slavery. He put in the original Declaration of Independence that these slaves should be freed, but yet he did not free his slaves. He could have done more himself. And there's one abolitionist that wrote that Thomas Jefferson is a man. Never before have they seen someone receive so much credit for something they did not do, because people like to give him credit. Well, he said that the slaves should be freed. Well, why didn't he lead by example? He was the most powerful man in the country. If anybody could have made a difference, it could have been him to say, okay, even if he said, I want to free them, I'm going to pay them. I'm going to make them indentured service. No, he liked having that free labor because he had a very elaborate lifestyle that he led. He died hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, which today would have been millions of dollars equivalent in debt. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, did you get anything from Jefferson? No, he didn't have anything. His children had to sell off Monticello and everything they had just to please his debts. That's how we got the Library of Congress, because they had to sell off all of Jefferson's book to make up for his debts. So he lived an elaborate lifestyle. And so he liked that free labor. So to say he didn't, or to say he did enough for the slavery, he didn't. He could have. And so when I talk about the evolution of my understanding of him, sometimes, you're like, oh, I can't stand this guy. I hate this guy. Why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? But also it's the balance of, but yet he did so much for this country and helped establish the most amazing place on the planet to live. And so it is that duality of understanding this man versus the myth, the legend. You know what I mean? So it's complicated.
Any other question? There's one back here.
Let me tell you, Hamilton is one of my favorite plays. I love Hamilton.
Sorry, what was this?
My kids, we have seen it multiple times. We can recite the lyrics. My daughter, she has this whole thing that she does as one of the Schuyler sisters, Mackenzie. She loves it. I think it's hilarious. I love the portrayal. I even love the little nudges they get when they talk about Sally. And I love, it's like, go back and do whatever you do at Monticello, And so I think it's funny. I like the satire angle that they spin to it. I mean, it is considered as entertainment, so not all of it is historically accurate, if you will, and they take liberties, but I think it's a great way to have an introduction into this country, into history, and people who never cared about history before now may go and do a little research and learn more about Jefferson, more about the people that are portrayed in Hamilton, and just great music. Lynn?
Anybody else?
Wait, come on over here.
My question is this. What happened to Sally Hemings after Thomas Jefferson's passing?
After Thomas Jefferson passed, she was freed by his daughter, and she moved down to Charlottesville, Virginia, to live with her two sons, Madison and Eston. And then after she passed, they moved away into Southern Ohio. Southern Ohio, Eston figured out he could not live as a black man and make the money he wanted. So he started to pass for white, moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and lived there as a white man. And that's who Julia Jefferson was staring, and who I mentioned earlier descends from. Madison Hemmings, my ancestor, stayed in Southern Ohio and lived as a black man, although he was very fair complected. He lived as a black man and built many things that are still standing today, and they have plaques recognized that they were built by the son of Thomas Jefferson, the Madison Hemmings. But it shows that the differences in their life, that Madison could never achieve the success that Eston achieved because Madison stayed in the black community. Eston lived in the white community and became very wealthy because, again, both of them were trained to the best of their skill sets. And Jefferson wanted to make sure that they had the ability to make money once they left Monticello. So that's why they were trained by the best artisans and people in the business. And while they were both successful, Eston became more successful because of his complexion, which is a lot of times why people pass for white. People say, why do people pass for white? I have people in my family still passing, but because of the opportunities, and they could not get those opportunities living in the black community. When we talked about DEI, it's because people wanted those opportunities. They couldn't get the jobs they wanted. They couldn't get the education they wanted. They couldn't get the safety, simple things like safety. So that's why when you had fair-complected children, their parents would send them up north to live with Aunt so-and-so or Aunt so and Uncle so-and-so because they knew that they would be safe up there living as white people, not as black people, because it was not safe, and sometimes it still isn't. 2 more questions. Eva and Lynn. Hey.
This one. Okay, can you tell us why there's a Thomas Jefferson Bible and what it's like?
I have not read the whole Bible because I don't want to be indoctrinated with that stuff. But I was like, I haven't read it, but I just know the gist of it, that he took out a lot of the sin stuff, and so he would be seen as a great person. And he just wanted his own Bible. He was a philosopher himself. He was a genius, and he was a guy that was well before his time in many of his ways and his thinking, which is why we have so many great things in this country now. But he was a man who just said, I'm going to do what I want to do. And one of the things he wanted to do was to write his own Bible and make it how he thought it should be. So he said, I didn't like that part. Let's take that out, So he, like King James, he wanted to be his own King James and write his own Bible.
That he didn't like. He took out what he didn't like. I have a copy of it. It's not as thick as the Bible.
Oh, no, it's a lot thinner. And
So
he took out the stuff that he did not like or did
well,
not
I guess he
agree
didn't
with.
like most of it then, huh?
And from this to this, some of the things that he did not agree with. Yeah, so, you can read it for yourself and judge if there are any historians who have read it in the room. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but, yeah, that's the understanding that I got.
So, Shannon, hi
My
there.
Houston family.
I assume now, for the first time, that you named your daughter after Madison.
I did. All of our kids are named after family members because I believe that it's important to honor history, honor our elders, and as well as our ancestors. So my firstborn is Madison Hemmings. I'm sorry, no, my firstborn is not Madison LaNier, but we named her after several Hemmings descendants from Madison Hemmings, the son of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. But also, I had a grandmother, Maddie LaNier, on my side of the family, and my wife had a Maddie on her side of the family. So she's named after multiple people in our family, but the main gist for me was Madison Hemmings, to
Neat.
carry on that name and that legacy in our
I love
family.
it.
And Mackenzie, just so I can shout out Mackenzie, she's named after both my mother and my wife's mother because her middle name is Jolene. My mother-in-law is Joanne, and my mother is Arlene, and Mackenzie's birthday fell between their birthdays. It's like all April birthdays, April 13th, 19th, she was right between, so she got Jolene as her name, and then Carter is named after my father-in-law, whose name was Cal. And I was like, I'm not naming my son Cal. I was like, it's so country. So we took his acronym for his CAL and named him Carter Antonio LaNier, Cal. Yeah.
I was going to ask if it had anything to do with Plains, Georgia.
Not at all. Although they're country, but yeah, we try to make sure we had a little bit. And my middle name is Antonio, so my son got my middle name as well. So we tried to make sure we gave their names purpose and meaning.
Any other questions? We got time for one more question, if there is any.
Were you, did they have a lot of family lore when you were growing up? Did they talk about
Family
the
what?
Jefferson family lore? Did your family talk about Jefferson?
Not me directly, other family members that I've met along the way where they maybe have his eyeglasses that they kept that were passed down, or a tea kettle that was passed down from ancestors in the family, or stories about Jefferson, but not really anything specific or particular. I know not even on the Jefferson side that I've heard much about. I know Lucian Truscott talked about the kids playing at Monticello and the connection that they had to Jefferson, but not much was said on either side of the family about lores or history, not from him or the ancestors, really. So we don't know much about it, or even the treatment, and a lot of things that were personal or were mysteriously lost, or a lot of the writings about Sally Hemmings, like he'll have a journal. It'll tell you every seed he ever planted, but when he starts to talk about Sally Hemmings, all of a sudden 10 pages of the journal are missing. So things like that. Some people say that there may have been some jealousy from the daughters, or some people say that they were protecting him from himself and they didn't want the truth to get out. You know, James Callender wrote a lot about their relationship in his journal. And when Jefferson, they thought that they were going to tarnish his character when he was running for president by writing the truth about how the kids at Monticello, the black kids at Monticello, looked just like Thomas Jefferson, and how he had this frivolous relationship with Sally Hemmings, and they're running around playing family at Monticello and certain things like that. But I also know that I think that I have heard stories of him disconnected with the children, that he wasn't the grandpa or the dad that was playing and catch with the kids in the field, his kids or Sally's kids, none of them, that he was focused on business and he was creating a country and he was focused on those things. So I don't think that he was that loving spirit that I have with my kids, with, you know, the connection that they had as a father.
Oh, we are just so delighted that you are here. So delighted.
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be with all of you guys and to, you know, catch up with everybody and give an opportunity to tell you all the things that have been happening in my life. And hopefully you guys will continue to follow. If you missed it at the beginning, follow me on social media at Mr. Shannon LaNier, whether that's TikTok,
I got one
Instagram.
question.
Yeah.
How come that there is an L-A apostrophe or a capital N-I-E-R?
So my name originally, if you look on my book when I wrote it 20 years ago or something, it was LANIER. And then after doing the Jefferson research, I started on my father's side of the family and found out, because I didn't know that side of the family, because that father moved away to Chicago, and my grandfather didn't raise my dad, but we found out from his other children that we found. I have now 5 aunts and uncles in Chicago that I never knew, found them 15 years ago, and they said your name is supposed to be historically LANIER. And so that's when I changed it, when I got the history from my grandfather's side of the family and those people who had been researching the family and knew the family. And technically, if you wanted to be French about it, you can say my name is LaNier. But my agent was like, no, just keep it simple, LaNier. So that's why I go by LaNier, but kept the capital N now.
We are
and all
honored.
my stuff. So
We are
yeah,
honored.
thank you. And you had a comment. I'm sorry, we didn't get to your comment, but. Oh, it's so good to see me after all these years, she says.
Yes.
Thank you. It is great to be back in Marshfield. So thank you guys so much for having me. Continue to follow on social media. Make sure you see the movie Tyler Perry's Duplicity on Prime Video. If you haven't seen me in that yet, it's a lot of fun. It's a thriller, so get ready for the roller coaster ride. And, and
Next
maybe...
movie, we want you to be a superhero.
Amen to that. I'm ready for it. Look, if you know anybody with Marvel or DC, tell them I'm ready. But thank you guys so much, and thanks to Nick and all the family here that I have. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Yay.
There's Nick.
Let's give them a